Hello everyone, I'm Bruffy1322 and welcome to the Stewards room, where we're taking a look at racing incidents submitted by you guys and trying to make a determination on who, if anyone, was at fault. There's a link in the description to submit your own clips, and feel free to check out the playlist link for more of these videos, specifically the first, which acts as a scene setter. Also keep an eye out for cards popping up on screen towards the end of each segment where you can vote on who you thought was at fault for each incident. So our first clip this week is on GT Sport. We're coming up to a corner, kind of a longer hairpin it seems to be, and we get a run going up the inside. There's a bit of a space there, and yeah, it kind of seems fairly innocuous, to be honest, for me, at least on first view. Obviously, whoever it is who was in the defending car at this point, the blue car, didn't think so, because as we go further on, we'll see that he gets a little bit annoyed, and it's kind of amazing to me how you can suddenly become a better driver when you're so annoyed. You know, he's obviously being attacked. He's obviously gotten overtaken, and then he kind of starts to drive a bit better to chase down a guy just to be able to take him off the road and you know, punt him off completely. So we'll see that, you know, he kind of sharpens up his driving a little bit. He's managing to catch up through the corners, and instead of actually using that to good effect and going for an overtake himself, he just tries to, you know, completely take someone out for it. So on this, we're not obviously focusing on this, but the blue car, if this was a proper racing event or something like that, blue car would be completely disqualified from a championship for something like that in my eyes. But we're talking specifically about this first incident, and did the black and white car do anything wrong here? For me, I don't think so. I mean, it was a good overtake. The blue car may have not seen him on the inside or something, but he was well up the inside at more stages. We're going to look at the Rules of Racing document as always, but especially at the point of contact, it doesn't really seem too bad to me. But let's take a look at the Rules of Racing document. So back with the Rules of Racing document, and we're interested in overtakes up the inside. We've been over this quite a few times. If the attacker's more than halfway alongside the defender, then any collision is the fault of the defender. If the attacker is less than halfway alongside, then any collision is the fault of the attacker. And if the attacker is approximately halfway alongside, then both cars basically share the blame. So I've slowed it down here, and as we can see, the black and white car pulls out to the inside and goes for an overtake up the inside here. And at this point, you know, even now, I would say that the attacker is far enough up the inside to be deserving of some space, especially here. I mean, when you look at it, they're almost level at this point, so he's certainly more than halfway alongside. And then obviously the point of contact happens here, where the blue car is wanting to continue his racing line, which cuts across here, but he can't do that because the black and white car has taken that racing line away from him. So the little bit of contact that happens here is really inconsequential, because if the blue car had noticed that he was there, maybe he just turned into him in the first place and they hoped that he would get taken off or something. But if the blue car had known that he was there, the correct thing to do would have been not to turn in and crash into him. You know, the black and white car has done enough at this point to be deserving of the inside there. He would have had to continue around the outside, and he would have lost the position anyway. The blue car, I mean. So for me, this is a perfectly reasonable attempt at an overtake. He was more than halfway alongside. In fact, he was pretty much level. You can see it from the blue car's perspective, where it does seem like it looks a little bit further back. But even on the blue car's perspective, the black and white car is still far enough up the inside to you know, and I'm not quite sure what this line is that the blue car is doing. If anything, it kind of the way that the corner works out, the line would be a bit further out here and cut across that way. So it's almost as if the blue car is just trying to make the angle as shallow as possible to stop the black and white car from being able to make this move. I think he entirely knew he was there, and he was just really trying to turn in and you know, cause an issue for the black and white car because he knew that he would have lost the corner at that point. So for me, this was a perfectly legitimate overtake for the black and white car. You guys can let me know your thoughts down below in the comments and in the poll in the top right. Was this the black and white car at fault for this collision? Was the blue car at fault for the collision for turning in too early and should have been giving away the position? Or was it just a racing incident? Wasn't really anything. It was just a reasonable overtake, and that was the end of it. It wasn't really anything to talk about. Certainly, the blue car, would be deserving of some sort of penalty for his reaction to what was seemingly a perfectly legitimate overtake. But yeah, you guys let me know in the comments and in the poll as well. We'll see what you guys think. So for our second clip, we're back on GTA in Roosevelt. We get a much better run outside of the previous corner. We go for a little bit of a tight angle dive bomb type deal, but was it really all that much? Now again, we've talked about it going up the inside. If you're more than halfway alongside at the apex of the corner, then you're deserving of some space on the inside. However, as we see here, today it's generally accepted that the attacker must be at least halfway alongside the defender when they reach the apex to have a reasonable claim to this piece of track. Moreover, the attacker should not have achieved this position by carrying too much speed to make the corner. This method is called dive bombing. Now the main question with this clip is, was that a dive bomb or was that a legitimate move to the inside of the corner? Now what I want to do is separate it from this secondary incident here, because obviously as we go up the inside, the defender, the silver car, well, the white car pushes the orange car into the apex of the corner, and that causes a secondary crash, as you can see there. But that was just a consequence of the first thing. I'm not really wanting to focus on that in terms of who's at fault. What we want to focus on really is this. Was this attempt at an overtake going up the inside of the track, inside of the white car here, was that dive bomb worthy? Was that unnatural for an overtake to happen there, or was that fair enough and the contact that happened was just a reasonable amount of contact that both cars got away with it in the first place, and this overtake should stick? So I want to go all the way back, because what we can see here is that the white car goes a little bit too wide on this part of the circuit. So he goes too wide there, and that gives him a more compromised corner here, whereas the orange car gets a better line through here, which gives him a lot more speed through the next corner. And that's why we see this big pace difference on the next part of the run to this final hairpin. He's carried much more speed around the corner. So even though the idea of a dive bomb is such that you can't just launch yourself up the inside of someone and use them as a brake. That is basically what the idea of dive bombing is, to stop. But I would say that the pace difference here comes from a combination of the first part of the corner, the previous corner, where he's just carrying more speed around the corner and does that better. And, they're both on the brakes at relatively similar times. The white car starts braking there. The orange car starts braking there. That's pretty much exactly the same time. So if it was a dive bomb, you would kind of be thinking the orange car isn't braking until about here to be considering it to be a dive bomb. So I think this was a reasonable attempt at an overtake. Obviously, it's a big wide corner, and I think the white car just didn't see the orange car coming at that point. But, as we're even before the apex of the corner, the orange car is more than halfway alongside. I think this was just a reasonable overtake up the inside. He took the racing line away from the white car. And yes, the white car maybe didn't see him coming, so he's already on his line to turn in. But I don't think that the resulting collision from that, you could penalise the orange driver for that in the first place. I don't think you could really penalise the white car either, because they both didn't really do anything out of the ordinary for what they would normally do for the corner. And the orange car just did the corner a little bit better and was able to get up the inside to effect an overtake. So for me, if I was voting on the poll, I would just vote this for a racing incident. I wouldn't really be saying anything other than that. It was just a racing incident, a fair enough overtake, no penalties to be given or anything like that, no real fault at this point. I thought it was a hard overtake, but it was a decent overtake, and all fair enough for me. But you guys let me know what you think on the poll in the top right as always, and in the comments down below. Was it the orange car's fault for going in too hot? Was it the white car's fault for not realising that the orange car was there and turning in anyway? Or was it just a racing incident and nobody was really to blame for any of this? You guys let me know, and we'll see what you think. So, third clip, we're back on GTA in electric vehicles, but hits a sign there, and that's what gives second place the chance to go up the inside, which he does. And then a crash happens on the outside. Pretty standard sort of thing. So really, first of all, there's a mistake made by the guy who we're looking at in first place. He hits the sign there, loses a bit of speed, and that basically gives the attacker the chance to go up the inside. He's got the position at this point to try and overtake. So let's slow this one down. As we can see there, he goes for the overtake up the inside, and at this point, as we saw from the rules, he's far enough alongside. You know, he's more than halfway alongside the defender at this point. So really, as the attacker, he probably should have stopped turning left at least. He didn't necessarily have to, you know, turn right and take avoiding action or anything, but maybe he opens up his steering at this point. The smart decision would be to open up the steering, continue straight for a little bit, and then continue turning left to give a bit more space to the guy on the inside, because he's managed to already have enough claim to the inside line and the racing line for the corner. He's done enough at that point. It was a decent overtake. But he does continue to turn even towards the very end, which, you know, you can't necessarily blame him for trying to keep the position, but he continues to turn to the left. They have a little bit of coming together, but again, at the point of contact, the guy on the inside is much more than halfway alongside. You know, it's almost fully alongside. So, as we saw from the rules of racing, any contact at that point is the fault of the defender for not getting out of it and giving enough space to the inside. But then what makes it worse is the second little bit of contact that basically, you know, it's natural that a car is going to drift wide when it's being hit from the inside a little bit like that. And if there was just a wall there or just an open space, everybody would get away fine. But because there's this tree here, he ends up, you know, being basically, you could say, punted into the tree. But for me, that was a fair enough overtake. If there hadn't been a tree there, I don't think anybody would be complaining about that. And the fact that there is a tree there doesn't make it wrong what the attacker does at this point. I think that's a fairly legitimate overtake, and in reality, the defender probably should have backed out of it a little bit earlier, especially at the point at which the attacker has already gotten up the inside and taken that racing line. He's already taken that racing line away from the defender, but the defender continues to keep turning to the left more and more, basically doesn't give the space that he probably should have done, invites the contact to happen, and then, you know, the consequences of that we can see. If he just, like I said, opened up his steering a little bit, given the space on the inside, the contact wouldn't have happened and he wouldn't have been sent so far wide, and he would have been able to live to fight another day. So for me, if we're saying that the car that we're racing with is the defender, the car who went up the inside is the attacker, I would say that the contact was the fault of the defender for not giving the space that he probably should have done, that the attacker was deserving and had done enough to be deserving of that space. But you guys will obviously let me know your thoughts in the poll in the top right. Was it the attacker's fault for, I don't know, going for the move when it wasn't really on? I don't know. It seems like a fair move to me, but maybe you guys don't think so. Was it the defender's fault for turning in when he should have been giving his space? Or was it just a racing incident? So final clip, another attempt to go up the inside. We're on Forza Motorsport 7, I think. And yeah, there's a big gaggle of cars in a touring car format. You expect a little bit more contact in sort of touring car type stuff. Tries to go up the inside there, but doesn't really get the move done. And then I don't know why he continued to push that, to be honest. But let's get to the point where we need to be, slow it down, and I think this will be a pretty easy one to determine once we've slowed it down and paused it. So obviously we can see there that the green car, it gets into the back of the car in front, and they have a little bit of a coming together. So the blue car tries to go up the inside, but doesn't really, in my opinion, do enough at this point. He's already locking his brakes. We at this point we see that that's where the contact happens, and it's difficult to know from this angle, but to me it looks like front wheel to rear wheel. And as we saw from the rules of racing, the attacker has to be more than halfway alongside the defender to have claim to the racing line, and if there's a collision, then it's entirely the fault of the attacker. And I think that is exactly what this is here. The blue car wasn't far enough up the inside. He clipped the back end of the green car, and that's a slam dunk blue car's fault, because if you're hitting the back end of a car going into a corner, then you haven't done enough to be up the inside. And you can kind of see that it was the back end as well, with the reaction that the green car has, that the back end completely comes out. If he'd been further up the inside of the car, then they would have probably been able to get through the corner with a bit of contact, but both managed to live to fight another day. But then, the blue car keeps, I don't know why, he keeps his foot in and keeps going at this as well and causes even more nonsense. But for me, this wasn't anybody's fault but the blue cars. The green car, did get into it a little bit with the car in front, but they were both okay. And really it was the car in front of that moving back over to the racing line that maybe caused that, and that's why that rule is in place, that you've got to leave one car width on the outside for reasons like this that we've talked about in previous videos. But I don't think that the blue car did enough in this instance to be expecting of some space here. The green car just took his normal racing line into the corner, and the blue car wasn't far enough alongside and clipped him. And the contact was entirely the fault of the blue car in this situation. But if you guys think differently, maybe you think that the green car should have backed off and allowed the space, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know in the poll in the top right. Was it the blue car's fault for the fact that the collision happened? Was it the green car's fault? Was it just a racing incident and either both of them were to blame or neither of them were to blame and it was just one of those things? You guys will let me know, I'm sure, in the comments down below and in the poll in the top right for not only this clip but all the clips that we've seen today. And let me know your thoughts. I'm always interested to hear what you guys say. And I just try to, follow the rules as best I can, but you may have some different interpretations of that. But yeah, based on everything that I've seen, I've given my thoughts throughout this video. You guys let me know yours. So that's pretty much it for this episode. You can find in the video description all the info and links that you may need to submit your own clips, and if you'd like to support me, you can do so on Patreon by becoming a YouTube member or simply subscribing and liking the video. Thank you all so much for watching, I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.